Hi, it's Rabbi Lewis wishing you an early Shabbat Shalom on this January 13th of 2023. And this is the week when we start our study of the book of Exodus. And it begins with this sort of unusual statement that there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. And that is really foreshadowing for what's going to happen later, because it's saying not that he didn't know who Joseph was, but it's a bigger statement that he didn't remember that Joseph, this Israelite, came in and taught the Pharaoh how to store the grain and distribute it and save it so that the empire could survive the drought and protect their people. And that then Joseph's relatives, the Israelites, Jacob and all, were invited to come and settle there and then grow in numbers. And this was considered to be a good thing for most of their tenure there. And the Pharaoh who arose didn't just forget Joseph, but forgot all the goodness that having the Israelites present there with them brought to the nation. And what it tells us also is that he became focused on the here and now, the glory of the moment. I am the Pharaoh, and I actually am fearful of this large number of people who are not really Egyptian, but this invited group of guests who maybe they'll overthrow me. And that became his focus rather than how good it was to have them there. So he became focused on the vanity of the here and now, the vanity of saying, I am Pharaoh, which makes me equal to Ra, the god of the sun, and the rest of you are really you are the subjects of all my whims. And there's nothing more vain than that. And what you're supposed to remember is the long arc of history, right? The goodness that can come to you when you plan and think about the future, and not just the self-glorification of the here and the now. And so what does he do? He enslaves the Israelites and then has them build, presumably, the pyramids and monuments and cities to glorify the Pharaoh. And they're not utilized in a way that helps grow the larger society, but only to remember the deeds of whoever is in power at that moment. And that's really something that we should scratch our heads and say, well, the Egyptians were known for having a sophisticated language and being able to write and record history. And all this Pharaoh would have needed to do would be actually to go back and read the historical records and have the knowledge of what was in the best interest of the empire, not what was in the best interest of himself. So that's really a larger lesson that we gain from studying the book of Exodus, because when he knew not Joseph, it's foreshadowing that forgetting their history is actually going to become catastrophic later, as the plagues will decimate the empire and they will become an embarrassed nation before all of the other nations. When we get caught up in that vanity of the here and now, it actually calls to mind the poem by the great poet Shelley about Ozymandias, who tells a story through poetry about who was Ozymandias, presumably a great emperor who had this monument erected to remember his great might and glory forever. And what he's left with are two vast and trunkless legs of stone, stand in the desert, near them on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. Tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. When we forget our past, when we don't study the history, when we don't think about how to apply the lessons of history to build for the future and to protect and take care of more people, if we only focus on the vanity of ourselves, we end up like Ozymandias, trunkless, lifeless things, standing in decay, with sand stretching far away. We need to learn the lesson that Pharaoh didn't know, We need to learn the lesson that Shelley is teaching us through the poetry, that history is not about ourselves. History is not about just the glory and the vanity of the here and now. History is about knowing where we were, how we got where we are, and how to get to where we want to go together. So as we study the book of Exodus, let's keep those lessons close to our hearts. And as we enter this Shabbat, let us reflect on what it means to think not just about ourselves and glorification, but about caring for others so that we can march into the future, a good future, as a community together. Shabbat Shalom.